I'd like to welcome to our show today another incredible guest speaker. I won't go into detail about this gentleman other than to say he's a Pathways to Aviation trustee. He was here before I got here. He's also a pilot, and he is a well-known attorney here in Reno, Nevada. So, Tom, welcome to the show. I'm turning it. And what they want to hear is a little bit about your career, what you're doing in the world of aviation right now, and if you have any advice that you want to share. And if you want to open it up to questions, you can do that at any point you want. But I just want to welcome you to the show, Tom.
All right. Well, thanks, Pete, for the introduction, and thanks for the tips on networking. I'm glad I heard that. I wish I heard that 20 years ago. I could have used it. So this program is great because you hear a lot of different things that are tools you can use for the future. I just wanted to introduce myself briefly. I'm an attorney in Reno. I grew up at Lake Tahoe. I have a degree in economics and finance from UNR. I hold a contractor's license in Nevada, pilot's license, and a law license. I graduated Northwestern Law School in Chicago, and I've been in practice in Reno about 49 years. I graduated law school 50 years ago last month. So anyway, a little bit about the aviation background. My dad was a auto mechanic. Then he became in San Diego, he became an aircraft mechanic. He became a pilot. He became an instructor. He became an acrobatic flight instructor. He got his ATR, air transport rating, and became a captain for Western Airline. He flew his DC-2s, DC-3s, DC-4s, and 6s. Out of LAX, he flew to Salt Lake, Las Vegas, Portland, Seattle. But at some point, he got tired of flying the routes. He was more of a cowboy or a cross-country guy, I guess, in one way of saying. So we moved to Lake Tahoe. He resigned from his captain chair and seat in the aviation world and became an entrepreneur at Lake Tahoe. He had planes around him during the years that I grew up at Tahoe, mainly after I left. We worked hard digging ditches, subdividing land, and whatnot. I went to UNR and got a degree in 1965 in economics and finance, and then went back to Tahoe. I had a desire to learn how to fly. My dad didn't offer to teach me. He was a pilot, but an instructor, but I don't know if we had a plane at the time, but he was busy making money and I was doing my own thing with him. But in 1966, I enrolled in a aviation school called Ag Aviation Academy in Minden, Nevada. This was a crop dusting educational place. They had helicopters, fixed wing, and they had recruits from all around the world actually coming to Minden, Nevada to learn how to crop dust. And I signed up in about March of 1966, and it took me 2 months to get my license. I flew 36 hours, cost $800, which is incredible. And I earned my pilot. It seemed like I was kind of a natural. I had a lot of instructors that, 2 instructors that taught me, but a lot of check rides. And one check ride pilot said, "How did you learn to fly so well?" And I said, "Right here." So I now have about 2,000 hours under my belt, private pilot. I was in the Air National Guard for 7.5 years in the photo lab. So I processed a lot of film. We went to Japan, took pictures all over Japan. And I was around the airplane, so I liked airplanes a lot. Backing up a little bit, when we were in Chicago at Northwestern, we were really poor. I was working 2 jobs plus going to school. So our big night out was going down to O'Hare Airport, walking around the airport and watching the planes land and take off. That was our kind of date for the week or night for the month. But in any event, over the years, I bought a couple planes. I've owned 4 planes, an Aranca Champ, a Cessna 150, a Bonanza V35, a V-tail, and then a straight tail A36TC. I own 3 hangars, 2 at Stead Airport in Reno and 1 in San Diego. I have gained a single engine land license, a glider license, and instrument rating. And why fly? You know, someone says, why did you get in flying? Well, I had a legacy from my dad and mom. And my brother went to the Air Force Academy in 1964, graduated, one of the first graduates from the Air Force Academy. My son has learned to fly the Cessna 150. And I thought, well, it's just a good thing. I don't know quite where the future is going to go. When I was 21 years old, I don't know if any 21-year-old knows exactly where they're going to go in the future, but I was had a degree, and I thought that flying would be some tool. I thought of it as a tool that it would advance my life in some way. And I really enjoyed flying, but I didn't quite know where to go. But I just thought if I kept learning, I was thinking about getting a master's in econ at UNR or elsewhere, but that didn't really pan out. But I did get my contractor's license in Nevada, California. I got my pilot's license, and then I was off and running. I became a lawyer in 1971. Actually, I graduated. I clerked actually for the Supreme Court of the Nevada Supreme Court, the Chief Justice. It was quite the up from digging a ditch where I left Tahoe digging ditches, came back as a clerk. But I had a wealthy client that was a pilot. He was very wealthy in the tune of $100 million or more. And so I wrote all this up, by the way. So this is my flight plan for today, by the way. So being prepared, you always have a flight plan. But George asked me if I could contact the president of University of Nevada, Reno and say, we'd like to start a school of aviation and aeronautics. I did so. And the university was somewhat overjoyed, but then underwhelmed because they said they didn't have professors at UNR that could teach. They didn't have students that wanted this course, and it was kind of no dice. George was going to put up some big money, $40 million to help this program go forward. They turned us down. I said, I'll get some students. I'll start a club. I'll start UNR Aero Club. And I had 30 students right, you know, like the first week. And we had a club that lasted about 2 years. We had some students that were pilots, some students that wanted to be pilots. We had students that were interested in aviation. And then it turned out there was 2 professors at UNR that had PhDs in aeronautics. Wendy Calvin was one that works on the Mars rover or lander, and another girl, but the university just didn't have the plan. So we got shot down, and I was kind of feeling sad because I thought it was a great vision to have a school of aeronautics and aviation at UNR. And about 4 months later, I got a call from a lady that was involved in the Reno Air Racing Foundation, Robin Powers, and her dad had set up a foundation, and she said, you want to come to a meeting? And it was like one of these things you hear about, that one door closes, another door opens. And this was just immediately a door opening within 3 or 4 months after being shot down at UNR. So I went to a meeting, and they said, would you like to be part of the Reno Air Racing Foundation? I said, well, sure. What committees do you have? And they said, well, we have education, outreach, and development. I said, I'll do that. And about a week later, I was the chairman of the development committee for Reno Air Race Foundation. It turns out I had quite a few friends that were in the aviation world. And so I invited them all to my office. We had 7 to 10, and we talk about what to do. And we said, is there a script? Is there a flight plan? Is there a program for this? And everybody said, no, just create your own thing. But one thing we found out, there was a guy up in Oregon that was referred to me, and he said, when I talked to him, that the best thing to do was to have a speaker series. And in Oregon, they had a speaker series, and they were running about 5,000 kids a year through a speaker series. And so we thought, let's try that out. So my neighbor in Nevada was the design engineer for supersonic jet transport SST, I guess they call it. It would go from San Francisco to Tokyo in 3.5 hours, supersonic. And I thought, well, let's use him as a kickoff speaker. So we had that gentleman, Richard Tracy, who actually was the design engineer for the Lear fan that was developed in Reno. So anyway, Richard Tracy came, and we had maybe 50 people or so out. And then we added, every year we'd have one of these speaker series at UNR in an auditorium, a nice presentation. And we had a person that developed the glider that wants to go to 70,000 feet over Antarctica. We had the supersonic transport speaker. We had the former commandant of the Air Force Academy. We had a regent from UNR Board of Regents that flew during the war. We had the guy that helped design the P-38. And it was a great thing for about 10 years, 8 to 10 years. And I thought things were going great. There was a guy named John Cook who taught school. He was a retired Marine pilot. He taught math at the Sage Ridge School, and he had a week program, Aviation Week, and he took his students to around town, to the airport, to the tower and whatever. And it was in the newspaper, there was a little clipping saying that John Cook had just completed a program for his aviation week. And so I called up John, the Sage Ridge School, and said, I'd like to talk to John Cook. And I said, could you come see me? And lo and behold, that same day at 4 o'clock, Pete Parker shows up with John Cook in tow. And we talked about the development committee for Reno Air Race Foundation and such and so. And John Cook then invited me to talk to his Sage Ridge class. And I went there once or twice. I remember once for sure, maybe a second time. He said, you know, Tom, these students really want to be pilots, but there's no clear path. He used the word path. And you'll recognize the word path because that's part of our logo and name here is path. But he said, if you want to be a doctor, you go to high school, college, pre-med, medical school, you take a test and you become a doctor. If you want to be a lawyer, you go to high school, college, pre-law, law school, you take a test, you're a lawyer, but there's no real pathway to being a pilot. And he said, this is what we really could help some students with. So we kind of corrected our program to say, here's a pathway to aviation. And also I met a guy, a professor at UNR that was a math teacher, and I met him in a welcoming ceremony, networking, like Pete said, with the reception for the new provost, Mike Johnson. But in any event, so I met with this guy and we networked and we said, okay, let's set this going. He was a teacher, and he's just kind of like Pete and some of you that are teachers saying, boy, this is a great idea. And so we started the UNR Aero Club. He came and talked. We had a lot going on. But then the budget crunch came, and he was let go from UNR. And the professor that we had as our liaison at the UNR Flying Club wasn't really together, and so with us, and so it kind of died there. But we went to work with Pathways with Pete. We wanted to raise funds, we wanted to raise programs, we wanted to do things to broaden the scope and keep thinking about how can we bring young people into the world of aviation. So we teamed up with the EAA. We did fly-ins at Stead Airport. I've flown about 100 missions, as they call it, giving young kids a flight. Actually, one year it was a repetitive, year after year. The mother said, we want to use that guy over there in that plane. And when I met him, he said, yeah, we had you last year. My kids wanted to go back with you. So that was kind of fun. So what are the reasons why Pathways are here, and why are the reasons for aviation for an attorney? I turned out to be a land attorney. I do a lot of work with subdivisions, shopping centers, evictions, purchase, sale of land. Matter of fact, we just closed 2 houses at Lake Tahoe for $20 million each. lakefront homes at 20 million. I sold a house for $50 million once and had the record for the highest price paid for a residence in US history. For 17 years, that record stood. So why is aviation good to me, and why do I keep promoting it? Because it gave me a network. It gave me a network to people that are high achievers, particularly at Lake Tahoe. My friend George that promoted the UNR Club and aviation program, he was a pilot. The supersonic jet transport engineer was near there at a landowner next to me. And so it turns out, wonders of wonders, one of my client's father invented saran wrap, if you can believe that. CC, is that you? Can you hear that? Another client of mine, father invented, started U-Haul. Another client of mine invented the Heelys, the little skates that go on kids' shoes. And so these people are really energetic and inventive, and networking has been great for me. And so I thought, well, why not I just keep my airplane logo and my airplane statutes and models in my office here. And when they walk in, they say, "Do you fly?" "Yeah, I fly." I have a guy that's getting his his rotorcraft license. He's a billionaire. I mean, it's just off the chart wealthy, and he's getting his helicopter license. So we're going to network something like that. So I have inventors, design criteria people, maintenance specialist, a guy that invented a maintenance program for the PT6 turbo engine, and he has the patents that allow him to extend the life, double the maintenance, the TBO, time between overhaul, for these PT6 engines. He's from Minden, Nevada. And so it's been a delight. It's just been more fun than hell. So flying to me is an opportunity to network, to grow. I'm always looking for a skill set that I can learn and master. And flying has revealed itself to me as something that I can actually do. The eye-hand coordination, the math, the direction of spatial awareness, reading charts. My legal work is a lot dealing with land descriptions, course and distance, and of course, exactly that ties in with flying. So I'm just happy as punch to be a pilot. I'm just happy as punch to be part of Pathways. And it's just been huge in my life. And Pete didn't mention, but I was one of the co-founders of Pathways way back when. We invented the name. This professor at UNR, we said, let's coin the firm, the name Pathways to Aviation. So I've been around for about 17 years, 16 years. To network is the bonding part of being not only a lawyer, but also a pilot. And we do have an association at Stead Airport called the Reno-Stead Airport Association. I set it up about 20 years ago. I'm the current president. And of course, there's lots of old pilots up at Stead. You've heard this say there's a lot of old pilots and a lot of bold pilots, but there's not a lot of old, bold pilots. So I'm a chicken flyer. I'll tell you, I get chickened out all the time, but I'm still alive and I like it that way. So in any event, I know you guys have heard some talks. Last week was Marilee Mora, who was another contact, a network through the Reno Airport Authority, Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. Before her was Marilee Mora. I've known almost all the upper echelon personnel at Reno Tahoe Airport and Minden, Carson City. So it's been a wonderful life. I'd like to open it up for questions. I hope I didn't bore you with my own personal story, but there it is, good, bad, or otherwise. I'm going to stick to it. So CC, if that's you, why don't you ask a question or two? And Pete, if you can open up the mic.
They should all be able to unmute themselves.
All right, CC, unmute and ask me a question or two. No, you're still muted, CC. go to your unmute. Everyone can unmute so we can talk right in tandem
Yeah.
here. There we go. Still muted. Chandra, while Cece's getting unhooked up here, Chandra, why don't you go ahead and ask your questions if you can, Chandra?
Oh, I would like to say thank you very much for starting this club, and I don't have any questions really. I just got inspired by your passion for aviation and your drive to start this club for students to help in their future to become a pilot.
Well, last week you had a whole bunch for Mary Lee. I'm feeling left out. So why don't you ask me one of the questions asked for Mary Lee, and I'll give you my take on it, okay?
Uh, there are no technical questions to ask since you are just the founder of this club. I'm really
All
appreciated
right.
to meet one of the person who helped in founding the Pathways to Aviation, and it's good to have you here today. And yeah, your club really helping a lot of students till now, and it also, I would like to say, it's also going to help a lot of people coming in the future as well. Thank you very much for this.
All right, Chandra. Cece, you got your ears on?
Oh, yes, I think I'm on.
Okay, now you're
Oh,
on. Good deal.
on. Yes. Well, I don't have any questions. I just want to say, yeah, like Chandra, I'm thank you for sharing your story because that certainly is inspirational. People who don't necessarily want to be an airline pilot or a teacher, a CFI, or a corporate pilot or ag pilot. There's so many opportunities in aviation. And I think Pete too for having guest speakers like you, because we can see all of the opportunities that abound in the field or the industry of aviation. And that's what I try to tell the kids that I mentor, that you don't have to be a pilot. It's okay if you don't want to be stuck to the rigidity of an airline pilot. And there are lots of opportunities. Like one of my young men is now in operations in the city of Lubbock at their airport. And we all thought he was going to be an airline pilot or open a flight school, but no, he loves operations. So it's really exciting to hear the different kinds of things that you can get into. So thank you, Tom, for all that you have done and will continue to do.
Well, one thing I left out of my little script was the fact that you just mentioned that the aviation world is a great world. It's somewhat hidden until I got into it, how broad the spectrum it is, particularly just in the Reno-Tahoe Airport Authority. They have personnel, they have, ramp managers, engineers, just the gamut. I actually wish that I had taken up the aviation law, the law of aviation earlier in my career. And there's an attorney, actually one of my former law partner, Ann Morgan, that's the chief counsel for the airport authority. And boy, what a cushy job that is. And I'm kicking myself. Of course, I'm at kind of the end of my twilight, if you want to call it, my legal career. But man, if I had started over again, if I heard one of these seminars like this early on in my legal career, I would have said, yeah, I'll make a point of learning more about that. Land use is an area I am a specialist in, land use. And of course, the airport authority is using land and developing land. And so I wish I had some mentor to me way back when saying, you've got the skill set, being a pilot and being kind of good with math and things. You could be a airport authority counsel and even going in. So I see a guy up here on the right with all the clouds behind you. I don't know if you have a name, Frank. Frank, why don't you shout out for us?
Yeah, so my question is, are you using your pilot license to network for your attorney business, or you're doing it the opposite way? You've become an attorney, but you're using it to find opportunities in meeting with other pilots?
Yeah, Frank, that's a good question. And that was on my script. I skipped over it, but I'm a water rights attorney. In Nevada, you have a blend of skill sets. So I'm a land and water rights specialist. And so I've had cases in Hawaii. I've had cases in Pahrump, cases all around the state of Nevada. And so flying actually is a good way to get to clients, Wendover. And so, yeah, I did that pretty regularly for a while. I was actually writing off about half of my flight expenses for a business expense because I had clients that knew I could fly down to different places. I don't want to talk about myself, but an opportunity came along to buy a water company. And so I bought and operated a water company for 11 years. It's kind of silly, but I did such a good job. The Public Utilities Commission put me on a speaker series to how to run water companies in Nevada. And so they kept referring all these tough cases with water companies running into the ground, so to speak, and not being sufficient financially. And so I flew around Nevada helping small water companies. It's a tough case. I will recommend to you guys, don't buy a water company because they're heavily regulated, and particularly small water companies don't have the staff and expertise and personnel to survive. It was just lucky that I had the skill set to push back to the regulation. And so I felt very successful for being able to defend. But most people that own water companies know how to operate a backhoe and put pipes together, but they really don't know how to financially run a water company. And then I have a guy, Henderson, here down at the bottom. You're muted, Henderson. Do you want to unmute and tell me what's on your mind?
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's my last name, and my first name's Zach. Anyway, I just wanted to, ask if someone is, not where employers would really look at, they're more like in training and trying to get credentials. Is it worth even going to places to network?
Well, my walk in life is that you never know when the door is going to open. My thought process is that see, I was I was installing floors. That was my contractor license, and I was dating a nice girl in Sacramento, and I said, being on the knees and pounding the floor isn't my idea of using my degrees in finance and economics very well. And she said, well, some of my friends like you went to law school. So I thought, well, to keep this relationship going with this girl, I guess I have to go to law school now. But anyway, at the door open, and here's a story if we have a little more time, Pete, but you take a test called law school admission test, the LSAT test. And I took it and I did okay, but one score I was pretty low on. And I went to my advisor at UNR, Catherine Duffy, and I said, that's a low score, and it's in reading and comprehension. And I said, that's what I thought attorneys did, was read and comprehend. And she said, well, she said it was your lower score, but it's really not that bad. So when you get to law school, not if, but when you get to law school, just take an extra course in reading and writing and comprehending. And so wonders of wonders, here's the door open. There was a writing contest. I took a course, put extra time in it. There's a writing contest at Northwestern Law School. Guess what? I won Best Paper of the Year award for Northwestern Law School. $500 check, a gold key, and a plaque. And that got me a job at the Nevada Supreme Court working for the Chief Justice. So I didn't mention I was digging a ditch for my dad's water company the day I got accepted to law school. So I got out of the ditch, went to the post office, got my acceptance, came back working for the Chief Justice of the Nevada Supreme Court. So the answer to your question is, life is full of opportunities all over the place. And I think if you keep your ears open and network, that you'll be guided to the choice you have. And the other thing I'll probably leave you on is that right now I've written about 30 books on real estate and water law. And I'm an instructor for surveyors and attorneys in Nevada. and I've been called by other law firms to be expert for their cases. Now I'm being hired by other law firms, major law firms, to help guide their cases. But the one thing I learned was if you like something, become an expert at it, study it a little more. And for my work, I got a few cases in real estate, and I thought, well, this is fun. I'll just, work a little hard here. And then working hard in one area or path became an accomplishment. I became an expert, and then I got big cases. And I got big cases. Now I'm an expert for other attorneys with big cases. So to answer your question, what to do to spend time at it, I would say, Mr. Henderson, to find your passion and go for it, and don't be hesitant. Like Mary Morris said last time, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Well, I went to law school with a wife and a 4-year-old child. I was in the activated Air National Guard for 18 months. I graduated law school, a wife and 4 kids, and I got straight A's my senior year at Northwestern Law School. And who would have thunk, because this girl in Sacramento said, why don't you go to law school? So Pete, I guess that's kind of the wrap. Josh, did you have any comment before we sign off? Josh, something you might want to say?
No, thank you for sharing. That was an awesome presentation. Thanks, Tom.
All right, back to you, Pete, then.
All right, Tom, thank you very much. Tom, what did create the name Pathways to Aviation? And not too long ago, it became our official name again. So that, we owe him that and so much more. So Tom, I appreciate you coming on the call today. So that was pretty neat. Next week's show is the first of 3 discussions about interviewing. So we're going to talk about how to prepare for an interview next week. We'll have a new guest speaker. We'll announce him here in a couple of days. And if there's anything that you need in the meantime, don't hesitate to call, email, oh boy, share your watch with me. But happy to set up a meeting to talk to you guys about career readiness, that sort of thing. So if there's anything you need, just don't hesitate to reach out. But
Pete, let me jump in 1 second.
You're
talking about a patch on your chest or something. Guess what? This is my little watch I got on eBay for about $8. But guess what? Anybody that sees my watch, they want to know about what's aviation in your life means. So go buy a watch, guys.
For earrings.
Oh, there we go. That's it.
Oh boy, we're losing this show. So we'll be back on again next week. And if you haven't completed your 3-step process, jump in there. Now's a good time because school's coming back and that sort of thing. So for now, thank you guys for coming on today. And I'm just going to send this off now.